Hey folks, Mark here, coming pre-Puma'd. Erick Ritchie asked me to talk about throwing, well, his specific thing was talking about throwing knives, but I'm going to talk about throwing weapons. I have some problems with that idea. And the short answer is, why do you want to disarm yourself? That's kind of a big question. But he also mentioned all these, quote, self-defense experts who are talking about using thrown knives as self-defense items. No. What I want to do is talk about the history of throwing weapons. Now, the problem with throwing a spear is the enemy can pick it up and throw it back at you. And that's why the pilum was such a great thing. And that's a Roman javelin that had a very heavy haft and a very soft iron neck and a very specialized for punching through head. But you'd throw the pilum and it would hit and go, and the soft metal would bend. So your opponent couldn't pick it up and throw it back. Another common throwing weapon throughout history is, believe it or not, darts. Now, darts, the little game you play in the pub, used to be like this long, and they were weighted and they were fletched. They weren't arrows, okay, but they also had a very long, sharp barbed end. Now, the war darts were called various things in various countries. The thing was, when you have a line of men charging you, and you have a line of men waiting, throwing these darts, the javelins could, and the spears and the pilums, could go further, but the darts didn't go as far, but they had enough weight that they'd still punch through. Now, by the time the guy could pick them up, they'd be on each other. So it really isn't smart to give up your weapon. And walking around the city with darts this big, yeah, they're going to want to talk to you about it. Another issue about throwing knives, or pretty much any weapon, is with a bullet, you have very light weight, but you have very intense speed. And that creates a shock when it hits. And that shock is what really does most of the work for you. Now, with pistols, they don't have that much power because they don't have that much powder behind. So they don't necessarily drop somebody like, say, a cartridge from a carbine. Bigger cartridge, more boom, faster, more power, bigger shock. Handguns often don't have enough power to shock somebody's system and cause them to drop. A thrown knife, definitely not. Unlike the Hollywood picture of when the guy gets a knife thrown in him, there's not that much weight behind that knife or item, even a shuriken, to cause the shock that'll make the guy fall down and collapse, right? So don't rely on that. Let's talk about where a thrown item, not necessarily a knife, we'll get to that in a bit, but a thrown item can be used, and that is for distraction. That is, you throw something at the guy, either to slow him down, to make him flinch and look away, or to not want to chase you. And this, the ninja throwing star, right? That kind of thing where they would throw him, yes, they would hit the guy, they'd make the guy slow down so the ninja could escape. So if you throw it as a distraction, okay, for escape, that works. There's a lot of things you can throw as a distraction that are not knives, but what they'll do is that they will cause a reaction that you can exploit. So if you take, like, say, if you carry a pocket full of pepper, which there's various and sundry mixtures of pepper, cayenne, metal shavings, etc., that used to be thrown in the guy's eyes, right? That can cause distraction. Throwing a soda in the guy's face will cause him to turn away because, well, it kind of burns. So yeah, a distraction as a opening move for something else. Thrown items do work. I'm not going to say they don't, but don't expect them to stop. The other thing is you throw something in the guy's face, you throw something at him, and then you run. Okay? That's where you actually have the best legal standpoint, because you used it as a distraction to escape against immediate attack. Now, one thing Eric asked me to speak about was the legal aspect. Short answer is there really isn't, especially when it comes to throwing knives. So people who are saying knife throwing is self-defense. Let's start with the fact that in many states, a knife, and using a knife on another human being, it is considered a lethal force instrument. That automatically makes it a felony. It could be assault with a deadly weapon, could be attempted murder. I have seen people who have butt stroked people with a knife. Didn't even touch them with the blade, just using the butt, being charged with assault with deadly weapon. So again, the same conditions that you would use a gun in have to be present for when you use a knife. So the idea of throwing a knife at somebody not only disarms you, not only won't stop the guy, even if it does hit him and land, but it's lethal force. And why throw a knife? No. The other thing about this that is important to realize is throwing knives are balanced and designed for throwing. Okay? Knives typically are tools. And as tools, they have multifaceted usage. A specialized throwing knife has no other purpose than throwing. Can't cut with it. It's basically dull all the way around except for at the tip, and that is for entering a target. And I can justify carrying a folding blade for work, etc., but I can't justify a throwing knife as a work item. It's not a tool. Now I want to talk about throwing things that I love to do. And, well, okay, so it's not things, it's actually throwing people. And I'm not talking about, jujitsu or judo throws. I am talking about anything longer than it is wide can be used as a weapon, including the guy that's with the dude who's giving you trouble. So I used to call this bowling for assholes, because I would love to grab a hold of somebody, move my body in such a way, and toss the dude into his friend. Okay? And if you're really good at it, your aim is good, and it takes practice to get that kind of aim, you can take down 3 people. I mean, they all go tumbling ass over elbow. It's done through body weight and rotation. So you move your body weight, and my favorite starting point to teach people is you're standing there face, you cross step behind, then you turn your weight, or you turn your body and shift your weight, and end up facing that away. So you do it right, and you turn 240 degrees, whatever that is. But you go basically from facing this direction to facing that direction, but you spin around that. Now, once you've glommed onto the guy, that's when you start shifting your weight, okay? Because that's going to break his balance. You lock on, you slave him to your motion, and then when you shift your weight, it's going to break his balance and his structure, pull him off. Then when you rotate, when you turn, that's going to accelerate him. Okay? Now, if you're really, really good at it, once you get past the hip turn, you can actually fling him to accelerate him even more. This is a really good way to grab somebody, whip them around, and throw them into something, and that something could be his friend or one of his backups. That is people slamming into you is likely to take you over. Now, you do that to get the idea, you get the timing, you learn how to do the mechanics of it, and it's a wonderful technique. But shorter version is you can actually start with your weight on this foot, grab onto the guy, shift your weight onto this, and as you're coming close to 100% over here, that's when you rotate and sling. Now, that is actually less effective, but if you've practiced the other one and understand the mechanics, you can throw somebody very effectively without even taking a step, right? Oh, by the way, turn your toe out in the direction you're going to help with the rotation. So, again, throwing weapons, throwing items for distraction, that might work, but remember, you got to stay within the legal use of force, okay? Because anytime you use an item, you're dealing with a higher level of force charge. So make sure you can justify that level of force. On the other hand, you know, if you throw somebody into somebody else, they really don't consider that assault with a deadly weapon. So that you can use.